Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Thursday, May 19th School Board Planning Meeting. Before we begin tonight, I would like to welcome Amy Brinton to the board. This is her first meeting, so congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, if you'd all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Benko, could we have roll call, please?
Mrs. Brinton? Here. Mr. Cook?
Here.
Mr. Deschaux?
Here.
Mr. DeLauder?
Here.
Mr. Eifert?
Here.
Mrs. Herman? Here. Mrs. Maley? Mr. Rihauser?
Here.
One absent.
Okay, first on our agenda will be celebrations. Mr. Cherry.
I'm invisible.
I'm taking pictures.
Brian's actually
I get the pleasure of congratulating our inductees, which means they just completed their first year as a teacher in our district. So we have some certificates for them, and once
This one.
we're going to recognize them, and we have a certificate for them. They're going to get their picture taken. Of course, I'm staying out of the picture. I would also like their mentor to come up with them if they're here. I know that wasn't a requirement, but if you're here, like, I see Josh, I see Drew, I see Terry, I see Crystal, I see Brett. So there's a lot of mentors. I see Jenny, Alyssa. So I think I got most of us here. I look around. So please come up with, I call their name. Nate Glass. He's at the intermediate school, so we want to congratulate him and Jenny. Jess Brickner from North Salem.
Thank you.
Emily Davis from Weigelstown. Say, Brett, don't forget this. Yeah. Amber Forey, also from Weigelstown. She didn't even invite me to stay for snack the other day. She basically told me to leave.
Wow.
Christy Garcia and Terry. Christy and Emily both have our autistic classes at Weigelstown, and they're doing a phenomenal job. They've done a lot of training, and they've had great mentors, but they really are doing a great job. So, congratulations. Amber, Davis from Live. Where's Amber? There she is. Another person, yes, let's get her dad up here. Good call. He did. Aiden Houston and Drew from the high school, social studies. Look happy, John. Jebediah Lindbergh from the high school. Also, this year he is doing some new programs. He has a career tech, and what's the first one? Your first
Project Legal Way.
Pardon me?
Project Legal Way.
Project Legal Way. I was drawing a blank on that. I'm sorry. Margaret Mayberry from the intermediate school with Alyssa, both counselors. She comes to us from, I'm going to say Virginia. I'm not really sure, but I know it's not our state. She's been a counselor for many years, and because of the state requirements in Pennsylvania, she's had to also do our induction plan. So, and did a great job with Alyssa. Dave Fortellis and Josh, high school ELA, having some fun with that this year, aren't we?
I think it is.
That's an unusual name.
And last but not least, Stephanie Sable, over at Dover Elementary with first year in, getting a lot of different students, mixing it up, and still smiling, so that's a good thing. So that is all of our. I'm going to take one of the. At this time, would all mentors and mentees please follow me? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is the public comment period. This is a 3-minute period for items on or off of the agenda. If you would be interested in speaking, please come to the microphones and state your name and address. Okay, seeing no one moving, we'll move on. Board President's communication. I did want to announce that immediately after this meeting, we will have an executive session to discuss personnel matters that will be on our next agenda for next week's meeting. That will be, as I said, after this meeting. Other communication items, I just wanted to mention that last night many of our board members had the opportunity to attend the academic awards banquet at the Wyndham Hotel, and what an experience that was. It was very exciting to see 130 of our students recognized for their achievements. The scholarships that came through are great. I think the one student received a $29,000 scholarship. It was very exciting. So it's very exciting to see that and the amazing accomplishments of our students. We also had the sports awards banquet recently, and a lot of activity happening in the music department. So a lot of great things happening in the district right now. So that would be all I have to cover right now. So we'll move on to the reports from the committees. Comprehensive planning, I know Mrs. Maley is not with us tonight. Is anybody reporting on anything related to comprehensive planning?
Are you lobbing that to me?
It doesn't matter, I can do it.
Okay. I actually joined them a little bit late, so, but once I joined the committee, they were actually going through all the results from the survey. So they have it boiled down to percentages and responses. I think Chris did an excellent job of trying to take some of the comments and questions and categorize them by clusters. I know Kathy has sent out school-specific information to each one of the building principals. And then we have a pretty large summary to give to the PBIS team because there's a lot dealing with culture across our district. What they're actually charged with doing before we kind of go for the summer is they will be putting together kind of an executive summary of some of the positives, some of our next steps, and some of the things that we're going to be developing or working on for 2016-17, and they plan to give that executive summary as part of their June update for us.
Any questions or discussion from the board members?
All right.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on then to curriculum and professional development. Mr. DeLauder, I know you came late, so I don't know. Is
I'm
Mrs.
actually
Herman
going
going to cover that?
Right here.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
At the high school, they're going to be offering a comparative religion class, which we will be voting on next Tuesday. Policy 908, relations, probably should be relationships, I don't know, with parents and guardians. Conferences are encouraged, but we cannot require a parent to attend the conferences, and that will be voted on next Tuesday also. Then policy 212, which is reporting student progress and grading. Progress reports, report cards should be issued at designated intervals. The district is moving back to quarters rather than trimesters. Teachers must keep grade books up to date. Administrative regulations will include specifics about grading procedures, And can Skyward track, this was a question that came up, when a parent logs in, because the high school teachers were saying that they want to make sure that the parents are aware of and seeing what's on, yes, on Skyward. And so possibly Jamie's going to check into that. Oh, she's going to check with Brad Perkins. And the committee recommends to move forward to the board for approval. Policy 130, homework. Homework should complement what is being learned in the classroom. It should not be new material. Valuable educational extracurricular experience outside the classroom. We're going to delete part of the policy that says in regards to other valuable experiences to be gained outside of school, because there was a little bit of concern that maybe the high school kids will say, well, my job is just as important as your homework, so I'm just going to go do my job and not do your homework. So that's coming off. And we will be moving forward for approval in June because it has to go to the solicitor. Skyward gradebook categories. Okay, they worked on that. There's going to be a drop down where teachers can, kind of like on the report card where you checked off different categories as far as the child's behavior, their effort in class, and so on and so forth. So Jamie had 2 sheets that were rather comprehensive, and then they were supposed to, she had the teachers here mark off the ones that they felt were most valuable and to have them put on Skyward. And it's going to be really convenient in that when they do any kind of reporting, when they're trying to report to parents what's happening and not necessarily at the time when the report cards go home, that they can simply go in, if the child, there's no concerns, they can type in, we've been working on this, geometry and math, we've been working on this in language arts, and they can do, they can hit the button that covers all the progress reports, and then just deal with the children that really, the parents will be notified as to who really needs, maybe to have a conference on, there's some issues with the child. Any questions? Okay.
Mrs. Herman, do you have any more background on the new course at the high school? Any more detail on that? Or?
Yes, that's on, it was on the agenda for our committee meeting tonight, so you go in and take a look at that.
Okay.
I read it, but I read it several weeks ago when we first talked about it, and I'm all for learning about each other's religions, because I think that's going to help a lot of what's happening in the world today. So I think it's 1 class a week. I think that's what it said. I thought it sounded great,
Okay.
so I was very much supported.
It's a common class I've seen.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from board members? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to facilities. Mr. Emig.
We have a couple D10 requests that need the attention. First item is that the tennis courts, refurbish the tennis court surface and paint new lines and replace the chain link fence around the tennis courts. That is scheduled for July the 5th. However, we needed to send out bids for this work, and the board will have to vote on that in June. The stadium, condition the field and top dressing. That will be done in July. Replace the paging alert system in the office for the high school or at the school. Paging system will start in June as soon as school is dismissed for the summer. Replace the fire alarm. That will take place in June as well as soon as school is dismissed. Paint the pool interior. We're checking with DAC to see if they will assist with the cost of that as well. Install new blinds in classrooms. Paint the corridors, that all we're working on, so that's where we are with those. We did receive an E-grant for roughly $32,000 for radios and cameras. We are replacing all the point of sale at all the schools. PlanCon has been submitted to PDE. The demand response for electricity, the meters need to be installed, will be installed next week. They had to wait because the people installing them need to have their clearances for schools to be involved with the students. Summer cleanup or cleaning of the buildings is all set up. And the marquee, We did get word that the Entire Student Council is willing to contribute $5,000 for the marquee. And there's a possibility that the brick base that this marquee goes on will be donated, the material plus the time. And we did get 2 proposals on the marquee, 2 different marquees. The one is for over $39,000, and the second one is for a little over $36,000. So with the $3,000 roughly that we have from a former class, plus the $5,000 that the student council, we're still about $30-some thousand short. So we're working on trying to get that money so we can go. And we do have pictures of what the 2 marquees look like. So if anybody's interested, Mr. Nelson has those, or we can check those out. Charlie, anything that we might have missed?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, that's all I have.
Any questions?
I have questions. Summer cleaning. When the buildings are being closed for the summer, correct? What are the dates of closing, and what date will they be reopened?
Do you have the schedule? Do you have the schedule for their elementaries?
Yeah, it'll be the 12th, week of the 11th of June, second week after the teachers are going, and hoping to open them back up the first week of August.
Okay. So they're opening the first week in August?
Yep.
Okay. So that means that the secretaries and principals will be allowed back in their building August 1st? Or is that not the first week? I don't know what the first week is.
I don't know
Okay, and I think that's important to know a date there, because if it's August 7th or 8th, we've already got a whole week going. And when do we come back next year? August?
August 1st is Monday.
August 1st is a Monday.
That's a
Okay,
Monday.
well, that's good. So I'm guessing August 1st.
We're back in on the 15th, the week of the 15th.
Okay.
That's 2 weeks.
All right, I have some concerns about this closing the buildings for the summer. My first question is this: did anybody ask the secretaries or any, the principals or whatever, how this would impact them? Or was it just kind of like decided that we were going to do this?
It started as an internal conversation because we currently shut the entire district down on Fridays. And I think we have a cost savings of about $30,000. So one of the suggestions or ideas was how we could actually capitalize on that and save additional dollars going into the summer months. So we did take a look at, we had internal conversations as a leadership team about what we'd like to do. So we talked to them, we talked to the principals, and then afterwards it kind of ran from there. I think kindergarten registration, it ran rampant there. So since then we have been dialoguing and conversing with the buildings.
Okay, so the principals are all for this then?
I don't know if they're all for that, but they're aware of it.
They're aware, okay. Well, I just wondered who made the decision, because I can't imagine being pulled out of my classroom and taking everything I would need up to another building to work for the summer. And so I was concerned about this. So, I think we need to understand that how much is done in those offices over the summer. And I know Dave explained to me about how they would be turning back the air conditioning, and he explained kind of the routine of everything. But they all have their own thermostats. So they could the whole building, correct Dave, could be pretty much turned back, excuse me, and then the office could maintain their temperature at what they wanted it to be.
You could, but you're still running the whole chiller for the entire building. So you're not turning the chiller off, or you're not cutting the chiller back. If I have to turn a chiller on to cool a building, I turn the whole chiller on. I can't turn part of it on. So if we want to cool one room,
The entire machine comes
we got to
back.
run that 80-ton chiller just like we were cooling the whole building. There's no difference.
Okay. Okay,
It's
and
it's not a matter of like saying it's kind of like in your house when you say, well, I've got hot water heat, and I just want to heat my kitchen. I don't want to heat the rest of the house. Well, you can't do that. You're running a boiler regardless. Same thing here. Not all the buildings are like that. Some of the buildings we have the ability to isolate because of the way they're set up, rooms or wings, so to speak. Like at Waggelstown, we can do wings, but we can't do rooms. We got to do the whole office, or we don't do any of it. We can't just do a room or 2 rooms in the office. Dover Elementary, we have to do the whole office. We can't just do part of it. We can do individual classrooms here because each individual classroom is individual. We don't have a main shower here, so we don't have to worry about that. Intermediate school is done on 2 chillers, so you're running, if you're going to be open, you're going to run at least one of those chillers to keep that area even moderate. With the exception of the office, that's a standalone unit in the office. So each building is kind of unique in a way. North Salem, you run all of it or you don't run any of it. Live's the same way. If you're going to run the air conditioning, you're running an 80 or 100 ton chiller, and they chew a lot of electricity up.
Okay, and I appreciate the fact when you try to save money. I really do. I live in this district, and I know what taxes are. But sometimes when we try to save money, we do things that aren't really feasible, okay? So we have the secretaries work in the office all summer. They have to do all the cumulative folders, which I get. They could take all them 500 folders and cart them to the high school. But they have parents coming in all summer. They were not aware of this, the way I understand, at kindergarten registration. So they were telling parents who didn't have the birth certificates or the immunization or whatever else they needed, oh, we'll be in school over the summer. You can bring them into us then. So that's going to be a bit of an issue. Now, they also get their supplies. They're brought by UPS. And I know that they're all checked in. All the books, everything is checked in. And then those secretaries have to organize all the files for the new teacher of the next year. Because some people think that the class I had this past year is the same class I'm going to have, is all going to stay together and go to a different teacher next year, but they'll all be the same class. And it doesn't work like that. All the children are pulled from different classrooms to make up a new classroom. So they have to organize all those files, plus get all the 6th grade files up to the 7th grade. When they get the materials in, they sign them in, they get the files out, they count how many books of this they'll need for this classroom, how many books of this they'll need for this classroom. So all summer long, it's a constant flow from the offices into the classrooms where the materials are needed. So all that is going on at the same time. Parents are constantly dropping by. They get phone calls. They get phone calls from other districts saying, I need these files. This child has withdrawn. I need you to send them. So they need to get back into their files again and pull those out. I also learned that they keep 7 years worth of materials, any type of teacher information or withdrawal slips, emergency cards, anything, any type of paper that's been generated from the year. They put those somewhere, and they toss that 7th year and bring in the new year. So all that is done. And if we send them to the high school to work, then they have to spend a lot of time. Now, they have an extra secretary for 2 weeks after school and 2 weeks before. But they're going to take that time that normally that secretary is helping them do all this transitioning over. They're going to spend all their time packing. And I think that's a waste of money and time when we're paying them to box everything up to ship up. My other big concern was for the classes of children that are going to be sent to the high school, disrupt them. I cannot imagine packing up my entire classroom of the materials that I will need for maybe a month or two and ship all those up to the high school. Plus, 2 of the classes are the autistic. And I was in those rooms, and they have so many materials, and the rooms are blocked off in certain ways for the children to maintain attention, that I can't imagine packing all that up for I don't know how long they're up there, and then repacking it and sending it all back, and you have to completely redo your room. And I know when I went back from a summer off, it took me at least a week to set my classroom back up again, because there's so many things that you must do to get your year up and running. Even simple things like putting name tags on 25 desks or however many children you have. So there's a lot that needs to be done, and the teachers need to be in to do that. But back to, my mind went on, back to the children. I believe it's Dover has a class of preschoolers, and they put out a little poll. And those children, I would guess the autistic children also, but I know the preschool children go out and use the playground. There is no playground at the high school. So there's a lot that we have no idea that goes on. And I went and I asked a lot of questions because I wanted to know if this was, to me, it seemed like a crazy decision. And I wanted to know if it was legitimate, if it was something that they could live with. They pretty much, the girls all pretty much told me that they would wear miner's hats. One said she has one of those little hats, those little lace you wear when you camp. And she said, I will use a fan. They all said they would use a fan if they could at least stay in their office for the summer. Because you can't work without your stuff. You just can't. So I'm very much against doing this, and I'm hoping that I can appeal to the rest of you to understand that. I know Dave did quote what he thought might be the savings on this, and it is a lot of money, but not for the disruption of all the programs, of what the secretaries are doing. They take inventory. They go and they take all their inventory and then make up their what do they call them? Purchase orders that they have to do and make up. So there is a lot going on. And I would just like to appeal to us to not, to second guess this and think about moving them. I think that's all I have, Terry.
Was that it, Mrs. Herman? I thought you said you had several questions.
Well,
Answered them all?
no, that was it for this one. The rest will probably come later.
Come later, okay. Anybody else for facilities?
I guess just following up, so I'm clear on it, the plan is to still operate on a 4-day week for the entire district, and then closing the elementary schools for the entire summer from start to finish.
Right.
And everything will operate out of the high school.
Right, we still have specialized classes. I mean, the classroom that Mrs. Herman spoke of will still operate out of Dover Elementary. I think we have 7 ESY students, if I'm not mistaken. How many ESY extended school year students do we have? 9. Okay, so and we'll have specialized programming for them over the summer as well, but they will be at the high school.
Okay, thank you.
My feeling on the situation is, from what information has been given to me, that it's a change in school policy, so it should be put on the agenda for Tuesday night's meeting and let the board vote on it, and if the board votes in favor of it, then that's what we do, and if the board votes against it, then that's what we do, but I feel it should be a board vote.
Anything else?
Can I want to kind of follow up, since I'm, kind of new here, I just want to be clear. With did you say that the LIU classes that are here over the summer for Dover, the Dover Elementary, will they still be here, or are they also?
They're going to be in the classroom right across from here because they also have services, they have drop-in services that we need to do. So we're able to isolate those particular classrooms, so they'll have air conditioning, they'll still be able to operate. In fact, we just met about this recently, so they'll get access to the building and they'll still be able to do what they need to do. And then for the 9 students at the high school, we'll set up their program there for them.
So they will have the support that they're okay.
Anything else?
I also wanted to make sure that the PlanCon submission, because there's still a little bit of buzz about that. Once again, just to reiterate that the information that we submitted to the state PlanCon A and B was simply just a placeholder. So I wanted to dispel any rumors that we are moving forth with a project, that we've approved a project, that in August there will magically be a new high school behind the intermediate school. So I'm letting everybody know that that's not happening. What the state did, the state imposed a May 15th deadline that said any school district that's interested in possibly doing any type of renovation and or building projects should submit a plan indicating what that plan would be, what that size would look like, what the building would look like, what your intentions are to do, simply for the fact that if PlanCom monies became available, we would then be eligible for reimbursement. So the information that we submitted was simply just an idea. It's a concept. I think there's a 3-year period on it that if we don't act on it or submit additional details, that it's kind of null and void, so to speak. So this just really allows us within this time frame to say if we decide to build, that we would be eligible for any type of reimbursement. So I just wanted to address that again.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, we'll move on to Human and Fiscal Resources. Mr. Cook.
We had a very large agenda tonight and an even larger agenda coming up on Tuesday at our full board meeting. A number of things coming into play here at the end of the fiscal year and setting the budget for next year. So bear with me as I go down through these. I'll try to highlight a few things about each individual item. We talked about the appointment of our district auditor for 2016-17. Again, recommending Boyer and Ritter, who has been doing that for us. There is no additional cost involved in the audit for next year, no proposed additional cost. One of the reasons why that is the case is because Dover has increased their reporting responsibilities. It's kind of helped to bridge that gap. So the cost of the audit is approximately $30,700. It seems like a lot of money to me right off the top, but Jen had shared that it's very reasonable compared to other firms, actually more reasonable than a lot of other firms. So it's sort of the nature of the beast. They spend a lot of time doing that audit. There is plans to also get the time frame moved up a little bit as we've continued to enhance our ability to get numbers together for them. So as you see there, there's a date listed there of October 31st. So that will come to the full board on Tuesday night for your approval. On Tuesday night, we also have the finalization of our budget to vote on. There has been, just to back up to last month, we had voted to approve the posting, the public posting of a budget. That budget is still fluid. There was nothing that has been approved at this point in its entirety, finalized version of it. There are still some tweaking being done to it. There's some changes that had come before us as a board last month, and there's a few other changes that are still being worked on. Jen's going to go into the details of that on Tuesday evening. But one of the things that became a little bit of a hot button topic was our athletic director, or our trainer, I'm sorry, and the potential elimination of that position or outsourcing that service. That has since been taken off of the proposed plan, keeping a full-time trainer is still part of the budget now, and that has been eliminated in case anyone was wondering about that. There are a few other things that are also being tweaked and worked on, and we'll get a much more in-depth discussion with that on Tuesday night. One of the things regarding our core budget that we've been talking about is the elimination of the per capita tax. I know it's been part of our discussions as we've been looking at the budget. For me personally, I'm not quite sure how the rest of the board feels about that particular item. I had made the suggestion in our committee meeting that maybe we should pull that out of the core budget and let that be a line item that we would have an individual vote on. I'm open to whatever you want to do on that, but we probably should, at least have some sort of a plan for that, whether that's just going to be part of the core budget or whether it's going to be a line item for Tuesday night's budget presentation and vote. Jen did do an analysis of the 2014-15 per capita tax, the total revenues, the total expenses as best she could determine, and that is available if anybody wants to know more about that. She went over that with us in committee. It would roughly be, for that particular year, it was about $122,000 net proceeds from the per capita tax. So more to follow on Tuesday night then with that. We do have the budget and tax rate approval. There is a resolution that will be coming before the board. There might need to be some tweaks or amendments depending on what we do with the individual or the per capita tax if you decided you didn't want to eliminate that, for example, we would have to amend that. But that resolution, which lists our tax rates and, for the upcoming year, would need to be approved on Tuesday night as well. Homestead Farmstead resolution will need to be approved as well on Tuesday evening. Approximately $1,277,000 is reimbursed to the school district, planned to be reimbursed for our exclusion of the homestead, farmstead taxes. It's very similar to 2015-16. Am I correct on that? It's almost the same. It's very, very almost the same, almost no change at all in that. Insurance package renewal will be up for the full board approval on Tuesday night. The premium summary, there's actually been a bit of a reduction, not a large reduction, but a reduction nonetheless of our total insurance package. You can visit that attachment in committee documents if you want to see where those changes are. The slight reduction in workers' comp, and that will be up for full board approval then as well on Tuesday night. We talked about the interscholastic and student accident insurance plans. Those plans, again, available. The interscholastic part of the insurance plan is district paid for all athletes who participate with that. The additional accident insurance, student accident insurance plan is a parent paid option for things outside of normal interscholastic. Could be, just the normal things in school or wood shop or, whatever, band, anything like that. So again, the premiums are exactly the same or very similar to what they were last year, and so that will be needed to be voted on Tuesday night. Budget transfers, we talked a little bit about budget transfers. There are a number of transfers that need to take place here at the end of the year. All of the items that are up for transfer represent out of one line item, one part of the budget, and into another. There's no additional money necessarily coming from anywhere else. It's just basically revising where there was shortfalls and surpluses to get them into the right area. Jen did mention, and maybe you want to speak to it, to the full board about the quarterly reporting out and your plans for that.
Yeah. As far as the budget transfers go, where the business office is going to be trying to provide those to you on a quarterly basis, so be a little more transparent on things that are happening and items that we have to move from one bucket to another bucket. So we're going to start trying to do that on a quarterly basis as part of a quarterly close process that we are implementing at the business office.
Thanks. What that will also do is it'll bring us up to a more accurate number when we're preparing the next year's budget as we get towards the end of the year. As it is right now, most of the transfers are all done at the end of the year, and the budget preparation is already in progress by the time you really have those numbers accurate. So those transfers will be up for full board approval on Tuesday night. Item J, property valuation. The valuation in terms of assessment is up approximately $1 million at our current assessment. That's good news. There's increased property values and more developments that are now becoming taxable properties. So it's about $1 million higher than it was in the previous assessment. PSBA dues, as you know, we have an all-access package right now that has the LearnPass with it. We are recommending that we continue with that package. There is a lot of very, very good things that PSBA offers us. We've seen a lot of enhancements with our policies, and that by itself has been a huge blessing to have. So the cost on the PSBA all-access package is $13,754. That would give us a full year of coverage and all the training that we've been enjoying. It's actually, as a package, it's about $800 cheaper than it would be if you went out and you purchased each of the individual items. So it makes sense to do the package there. So that'll be up for full board approval on Tuesday as well. Treasurer's report. If you recall, last year when we finalized our budget, we had anticipated that we would be in the red at the end of the year and had made plans to use about $2.4 million of our fund balance to meet the budget. As it turns out, at Jen's best guess now here at the end of the year, looks like we're going to be about $400,000 in the deficit. So it's about a $2 million difference. So we won't have to tap into as much of the fund balance here at the end of the year to get through the remainder of the year. So that's good news as well. As far as looking at the budget in analysis, the treasurer's reported in a little bit more detail. Salaries were up a bit. Benefits were up a bit. PSERS was up as well. We have one more year of PSERS spike yet before everything kind of levels off there. So some good news here at the end of the year on that end. And the final item is technology leases. There's several leases there for iPads and MacBooks. The iPads is a 3-year lease. The MacBooks are the 4-year lease. And it's really, the district really is moving from a wholesale purchase to more of a lease option. And the benefit of that is you can really do it for about the same amount of money, so there isn't going to be a whole lot of additional money, even though there's a lot more devices coming into the district. So it's a wise way to move ahead with technology without spending a lot more money to implement it. So those two things as well will be up for full board approval on Tuesday. Did I miss anything?
I think so.
That was as brief as I could be.
Thank you.
That was a lengthy, brief discussion. So I guess we do need to discuss, though, about the per capita tax. If we as a board want to see that pulled out, we need to, I guess, kind of say so.
I'd recommend that we pull it out as a line item. We have several others to vote on as line item issues, and I think we've all had thoughts regarding that, so it probably makes sense to make it a separate vote. Okay. Tuesday then.
Okay with that?
Are there any questions for Mr. Cook?
All right.
Okay.
Got to be attention to that.
Okay. Do we discuss the budget tonight, or should I hold, this was the email that we received, and I have some questions on this. So should we discuss it now?
But you can definitely ask some questions.
Okay. All right. Can you bring that up on there?
Just give me a second.
Okay, page 4.
Let me look at this and make sure it's our final one before I stick it up there for. This page?
Okay. All right. $303,000. Okay. So, and I don't understand a lot of this, so please be patient and explain this. This says that PDE gave us money that we didn't expect to get. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what are we going to do with that $303,000? Because it has to be divided between those 3 categories. Is that correct?
The majority of that was our basic education funding.
Oh,
regular
okay.
education.
All right. All righty. Then the next, yes, well, okay, the stipend for tech coaches. Are we sure that they're not already doing these things within their day that we're going to pay them for this.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, and that's kind of what we reviewed, so we're going to be removing that item
Okay.
after discussions with our secondary folks. So I think Mr. Wassler's been able to free up individuals to do that, so we considered
Oh,
that.
okay, great.
Yeah, we thought if the board is going to go ahead and approve the media specialist, A, there's kind of some individuals who have been trained in technology. B, I think through his scheduling process, he's been able to free individuals up. So we feel secure that in our first year of implementation, that we'll have the support we need.
Okay, all right. Then on page 5, yes. Okay, at the bottom of page 5, it says, no, excuse me, okay, wrong page. Reorganized two educational departments, savings $159,000. Okay, first question, how are we saving $159,000? I'm guessing it's salaries. Is that
Hours and
correct?
benefits.
Okay, but we're still going to have 3 people in that department. Isn't that the way it was? Like, it was a head and then 2 coordinators or something, is that correct?
Instructional systems, right.
Okay, so we are completely reorganizing that and changing personnel in that department. Okay, now I have some real concerns about that because special ed is a very special department, okay? And I asked, how many IEPs are we following? And that's like 600 children. So they're not, I mean, they do everything in special ed, I mean, all the different categories. Of course, we have the learning support, we have the life skills class, you have the autistic children, who am I forgetting? Emotional support. There are so many departments within that department that we have 2 people working in that right now. And there are so many, I don't know if it's mandates or paperwork or what it is from the state, that it really concerns me taking that particular department and changing it, and what sounds to me like downsizing it. Okay, that's what I'm hearing, because if you leave it the way it is, those people are working constantly within that department, the special ed department, and doing all that they need to do, not only visiting the classrooms and supporting the teachers, perhaps doing any type of trainings and new initiatives that come along. There's got to be a gazillion new initiatives that come down from the state for this. It concerns me that we could get nailed with an auditor if we aren't careful into how this is done. It just seems like an extremely important department for me. And the other job was the child accounting, which I have that job description, and there are so many categories within this job description that this person has to deal with, and they have to comply with, and all the paperwork, and I know this department for years now, and how much goes into that person's workload, and that again, mandates from the state, reporting to the state. If we boo-boo one time and have children that accounted for that aren't here, and we get paid by the state for that, we're going to get nailed on that. So I think I'm concerned about taking 3 jobs that I think are already loaded to the max and trying to downsize that. Okay. So saying that, and maybe you can explain that, but the next thing is the intermediate school and the high school media specialist. I don't have a problem with that. The only thing is, I was wondering about the expense, $80,000. Is that, it can't be 2 salaries for 40. Is that 80 per person?
Before we go on to that, could we actually have some discussion with Mr. Cherry
Oh,
about
okay.
that first item that you've raised a lot of concern about? I'd like to hear his thoughts related to that,
Okay.
and then we can move on to the
Okay,
media
sure.
specialist.
The merger simply deals with the managerial of the department. So in terms of the workload and those individuals associated with that do not change. So anything that's at the school level in terms of special education, gifted support, learning support, instructional aids, PCAs, all of that stays the same. So we're really just taking a look at the management of that department. So now we're going to have 1 manager. We still will have 2 instructional individuals that will support that particular manager in that department. So there's still 3 individuals within there doing that. So after doing some studying across the state and realizing that's a commonly merged department, I then went to West York, where they actually have that department there, and I spent some time with the individual who oversees that department And she is the Director of Special Education / Pupil Services. And, we went through her job description, her day-to-day activities, and what she does, and they mirror our size, our same special ed population, and so forth. And I was point blank with her, is this a big job, and so forth like that. And they actually did it 3 years ago. So she said they used to have it as 2 separate departments, then they merged, and she said she prefers it merged simply because so many of the students that are common between those 2 departments, it's better to have one face representing that individual, because sometimes there was a redundancy in reporting or individuals. So they found that it cleaned their department up. So, they also talked about the support structure for the office. So there would still be 2 clerical supports for that office, one that deals specifically with pupil services and one that specifically deals with special education. Like I said, there will still be 2 IAs that go out and support buildings, that assist principals, that assist the case managers at the schools in terms of IEP writing and oversight there. There'll simply just be one manager ensuring that that work gets done. In fact, the way in which we have ours set up, they won't be doing all of the work of that particular department. We still have Mr. Perkins, who handles a lot of the child accounting information anyway, which is something they didn't have in West York. So that's a piece that they won't have to worry about. In terms of some of the charter reconciliation and information, we're going to be rolling that up into some of the business office. So that'll be rolling up into that particular department. Alt Ed is actually returning to the district, so oversight of that is now ours, and it'll be managed a lot by the intermediate school and the high school, because they'll simply be part of, those students will simply still be part of the building. They might be placed outside in the trailers that are behind, but they'll still be ours, and we'll be able to still keep the case managers the same. We'll still be able to support those students because they'll be here, and we'll be able to transition them back. In terms of online and cyber and so forth, Jamie handles a lot of that information now, so she'll keep that individual and to support her, and she'll still be able to oversee that. So in essence, a lot of the roles and functions will actually kind of just remain the same. Nursing's already part of that department. Guidance is already part of that department. Gifted's already part of that department. So a lot of the things that they're already doing will simply just remain the same, and some of those other ancillary pieces are already fished out to individuals that we currently have. So all of those things won't be moving over. We're now just asking for one manager to oversee that information. So, like I said, I did spend some time with their superintendent. I did actually spend some time with the individual who's in charge of that to try to learn from her some of the best practices. In fact, she looked at her superintendent and said, hey, they got more support there than what I do, and so forth. So, and that individual's also offered to sit with us and take a look at what we're doing, but she feels that it's a very, very doable job.
Okay, that was my next question. Have you figured out how you're going to streamline this? So you're going to work with West York on how to do this?
And we have a lot of it already streamlined. So all of those responsibilities that you see in that one job description that you have there, a lot of that's already been farmed out over the last year and a half, or some of it's already been pushed over to the Office of Exceptional Children, and that happened last year.
Okay.
Can I ask, was there any evidence or any feedback, I guess I should say, from those further down on the totem pole, for lack of better terms, as to how, if any, changes that they noticed transitioning from one way to the other 3 years ago? Was it a noticeable change? Was it easy? Was it difficult? Did you hear any of that?
No, some of their streamlining that they did, which I thought were some other best practices that we don't do, like they want to centralized IEP meetings, GIP meetings, 504 meetings, whereas right now they're all in the buildings. They do it all centrally. So there were some things that sparked my interest, and I know I began to have conversations about, do we think that would have worked? Will that not work? So I don't know. I still think probably schools may or may not like that. I would actually like to sit and talk with individuals about it. We think that'll work or not. I hear giggles and laughs in the background. But they did present some things that they do that we don't do. It appears to work for them, but once again, I would probably want to have some conversations before we do that. I was simply looking just from a management standpoint when it came to that.
So that $159,000 then is going to be salary. We're going to be
Salaries,
employ
benefits, and
people
so forth.
that
It's
are
not
going.
just pure salary, it also, it's all the add-ons to that.
Right,
Yeah, it's
right.
a
I understand that,
comprehensive
but evidently we're going to hire somebody that the paycheck isn't the same. Okay.
Then you had mentioned the media specialist. So the media specialist, the cost there, yes, you're right, that doesn't count for 2 people. We currently have 3 library secretaries, so this cost is an offset by downsizing from 3 library secretaries to 1 library secretary. But we would now have 3 full-time librarians, or 6 librarians in the district.
Okay, that's what I was
Sorry,
wondering
I
at.
correct
Okay.
myself.
But then, and how many secretaries do we have now?
We currently have 3. We have 1 that rotates between the 4 elementaries, 1 full-time at the intermediate school, 1 full-time at the high school. But because now we'll have full-time media specialists, we thought we would downsize the secretary, have the secretary rotate among the 6 buildings because they would have a full-time individual there.
Okay, now that, I don't know about that, because I've been in the library, I volunteer in there, and I don't know how they can run a library without a secretary. I honestly don't. That's why she has so many volunteers at Weigelstown, because she can't take books back from the kids and help them find books and check them in, and yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of busy stuff. And I don't understand middle school or high school, but I would suspect that they would have some need for a secretary too. Okay, okay, and then I did talk to Jared about the academic facilitator coach, which I'm okay with, but why $86,000 for that?
It's an average salary that we took.
Because this isn't an administrator. He does not want an administrator.
Salary and benefits.
Yep.
Okay.
That's how much benefits
All right.
cost.
There we go. All
I
right,
think
that
we took
answers that.
someone who would, took a hypothetical master's step 1 plus benefits, it cost us $86,000.
Oh, yes,
So
because they needed the
we wanted to put a
master's
placeholder in there just so that we would get an estimate of how much we think it would cost. It doesn't mean
Okay,
that's how
right.
much it will cost.
Okay. Oh, and then at the last page, it says, if the board accepts all the above proposals, there will be a net expense of approximately $82,000. Now, of course, I went and added all that up, but I'm guessing you're thinking of not having all the secretary, so there's some plussing and minusing in there that may not be necessarily here for me to see.
Right.
Okay. Okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
There was one thing that I wanted to mention as well, and one of the changes that we didn't really talk about tonight was allocating additional dollars for K-2 technology. Currently, Dr. Wiesling at Live is participating with some new equipment. I don't know if maybe you wanted to share. It sounded pretty exciting about what's going on over there, but
I know Brad's done a lot of visits there too, so I'm gonna let him.
Absolutely. What we did is in Corey Weitzel's kindergarten classroom, we've installed an interactive projector. So instead of having the interactive projector board like we have up here, the interactive whiteboard.
It's more like that.
And projector, it's now taking the projector and making the wall or wherever you project that be interactive. Plus, it's a lot brighter. You can interface all kinds of more stuff to it than you can on a roller projector. So that's part 1. Part 2 is we've also installed a smart table, which is basically take a ginormous iPad and put it on a table. So you can have 6 students around, completely interactive, writing, flashcard, whatever you want. There's all kinds of free software that we've been able to get her. She's found on her own too. So that's some of the things that and we also have some full-size iPads coming to her classroom.
And the thought was, and I think Nate brought up, I think when we did the budget presentation, is we're doing a lot kind of K-12. How do we kind of make those K-2 classrooms engaging? So not wanting to just buy a bunch of stuff and then throw it into classrooms, we thought we would just kind of run a classroom and kind of learn from that what works, what doesn't work. So that's what we're kind of looking to do right now. The additional monies that you see right there for the iPads, I think we asked for $15,000. That obviously doesn't mean that every single child in K-2 is going to have an iPad in their hands. It just simply means that there will be a class set anywhere between 8 to 10 that the teacher will be able to utilize in centers and other activities within the classroom, and also get the kids prepared for when they move into 3rd and 4th grade and they get a device to use throughout the day.
there was a comment that was made, a concern that was made about the compatibility with the whiteboards and the MacBooks. It might be something to work through, you know, as far as it was compatibility issues, perhaps. So I just wanted to share it. I don't know exactly the details of it, but. Okay. All right. All right.
Do you have something to say?
It's very glitchy between the MacBooks and some of the whiteboards, smartboards, and Proximas that we have. So much so that some of us have taken Dells from laptop cards and hooked them up because it's much more fluid and consistent.
And it's-
Elementary
it's
teachers
very
are
small,
having
very small
issues.
with the Mac.
Secondary, it's an ongoing problem.
Right, isn't it small in that?
Yeah.
With the Mac, it's very
That's not
small.
the concern.
Could you bring it in and show it to us? What happens?
It's usually a situation where you're in the middle of a lesson and it stops working. And then you have to take time away from your lesson to reboot the computer, reboot the system, rehook things up. Like I said, I'm going back to using one of the Dells out of a laptop card just because that doesn't present issues. And I've heard complaints from colleagues across the district.
I have a question on the activity buses. What is the timeline that you're expecting these activity buses to run after school is over? What is the length of time, or are the parents going to have to be responsible to pick up their own student at a certain time?
We currently, I did send out a sampling, a route sampling. I believe that the average time is about an hour after they leave the high school and/or intermediate school. So we haven't designated the stops, but if you take a look at the route, we have one route that's kind of northwest of the high school and goes through Washington Township, which was a concern that we had heard earlier on, and then another route that hits south. So on average, it's about an hour. I think the one may have been maybe an hour and 10 minutes.
What's the latest time that they would leave the school to take them home?
I think we originally talked about 4:45 to 5 is when they would leave.
So what happens if an activity goes past that? Then it's the parent's responsibility to bring their own child home?
The activity bus is a privilege, therefore, I mean, students they know that it leaves the same time every single day, except on Fridays or except on holidays or early dismissal days. So activities generally need to be over by that time.
Is that only for the sports or what? Because I've been told by a number of parents that have kids in sports that you're going to discriminate because some you're going to take home and the other ones come to school when the bus is already left for their practice. Some practices don't get over after 7 o'clock. So what is the real benefit? Because I've been told by parents that they asked other kids, they say, well, we always got ways to go home. So what is going to be the benefit? Because some are going to benefit and other ones are going to be discriminated against.
Well, there are other activities other than sports after school. So there are certain clubs, there are band practice, choir practice. There are certainly a number of extracurricular clubs at the high school that the students participate in, as well as the intermediate school. So once again, this was simply just a benefit. It was something that I'd heard earlier on when I used to do rounds with about extracurricular, and we didn't have a lot of participation in the other clubs, therefore, because of transportation. So this was simply just a means by saying, maybe if we offered this activity bus, other clubs that we sponsor after school would pick up participation and so forth. So I agree, it's not going to hit every club, it's not going to hit every practice, but if it hits a lot of kids and it increases the participation of other clubs, then it's a benefit for them. So this was just simply a means of individuals saying, hey, if we had something, we might get more kids to participate. So once again, I'm not going to argue the fact that it won't get to everybody, but if other clubs benefit, whether it's drama or speech, debate, envirothon, whatever's being held after school, then I think it's a win for those other clubs other than just sports.
Another question on this job changing where you're going to, with the pupil services and the IEP. Are we going to have a job description ready for us by Tuesday night, what this is going to involve?
I'll send it out tomorrow. I can send it out tomorrow.
You know, because I know with the with Mr. Riedel's job, I know when we did that one 2 years ago, that was a 6-page paper of all the things he was responsible for. And we need, if we're creating a new position, we need to have a job description so we know what's going on and what the salary is, and so we can approve it Tuesday.
Back on the activity buses, I know of many students that cannot participate in activities right now because they do not have transportation home. I'm fortunate that my parents are retired and they can take my daughter back and forth from her activities. If I didn't have them, my daughter could not participate in things like her jazz band, which they had a nice concert tonight, I hope.
It was
really
wonderful.
You know, their choral ensembles, things like that. And these are opportunities that the kids then have to take even farther out into the community. I know of one of the students that participates in one of the groups. He lives near the Green Valley swimming pool down on Poplars Road and walks back and forth to his activities at the intermediate school. We approved buses last year to run students from right next door here in this neighborhood to the high school and the intermediate school, you know, for school. And when there was a safety concern, then I'm not sure why we wouldn't be concerned about the safety of a child that's walking from Green Valley Pool area all the way to the intermediate school, you know, Route 74, things like that. So to me, the $20,000 expense for 2 buses is a drop in the bucket to allow so many kids to participate in activities, to protect their safety. I think it's money well spent for us, you know, and we're never going to be able to cover every single person with every single activity. That's just impossible, but this at least is a start. You know, it's one of those things too that we do it for a year, and if we see that it's not being fully utilized, you know, or we don't see an increase in, you know, student activity, then you don't offer it again the next year. You know, it's something that you could take away, but at least maybe for a year, we should be looking at this as an opportunity to test it and see how it works for not a lot of cost.
So what you're saying is it's more for the activities after school than anything else?
Yeah, the clubs, you know, the school groups that, you know, meet after school, it's an opportunity for them, so. Any other questions or discussion? Bobby?
There's a piece of this you're also missing. It removes all excuses for students not to stay after school to get help and assistance and remediation academically, as well as discipline consequences. So I think that's where an activity bus, at least at the high school level, would be a great.
It's a great point. Great point.
I know we've heard this for a number of years now about the lack of having activity buses. I've heard it from a number of different sources that it would be a good addition. And I agree. I'm not sure you're ever going to get to everybody's particular individual needs, but it certainly, by offering an activity bus that could capture as many as possible, isn't discriminating against any individual or any particular group. We're just trying to make an offer out there to help people get the transportation that they need. So I'm not sure where that would be coming from, but you know, hopefully it will work. Hopefully it will increase participation.
You might even have some parents that appreciate the service so much that they might contribute some money to help defray the cost of that. I mean, that's my school district. Some parents just aren't going to time, they're not there, but they love to have the service so their kids can participate in that activity. Who would donate something like that?
Any other questions or discussion on human and fiscal resources?
That district van, that's replacing one, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, moving on to safe and supportive schools and technology, Mr. Deschaux.
Okay, we had a couple of things. On Tuesday, we are bringing up a policy for vote for approval, policy 823 for the Narcan usage. So that'll be brought up to the board to vote on that. We also talked about policy 824, maintaining professional adult-student boundaries. We just started today by going down each line, looking over it. We have done some rewriting of some of the bulletins, trying to make more sense of it to where it meets our understanding for the policy. We did not finish it. We plan on having gone through it all by the next meeting
Okay.
in June. Our big topic today was the intruder drill. Mr. Cherry and I had about, a 30 to 40-minute conversation with the chief of police of the Northern Regionals. We did start talking about that. It's more setting up like a timeline for when it would take place. It could take up to 10 to 11 months. So the time frame they're looking at is anywhere between March and May of actually having the intruder drill. Northern Regional did recommend a school, but I repeat, no school has been selected. The school that they recommended was North Salem. They,
I already talked to Chris about this ahead of time, so it's not a surprise. I kind of said, don't fall over when we mention your name, so.
Okay. So they did like how secluded it was. They liked the idea that North Salem students could be walked down the path to the intermediate school. One of our biggest concerns we brought up was how well is the path maintained? We're going to have to make sure that it's able to handle every single student. Unfortunately, that we only have so many months before winter, so we're going to have to get working on that if that would be the building we choose, and then get back out there to clean up again after our wonderful winters. I know one of the big things the regionals are trying to get out of this drill would be removal of the injured people, control points, accountability with getting the student to their parents in a reasonable manner at the intermediate school. I believe at the next meeting they were talking about possibly having transportation there to get involved if, say, we have a person in a wheelchair or crutches. How are we going to get them from point A to point B? They did say that they wanted to keep the meeting small because they felt that it went together better. Not as many people trying to put their 2 cents into it. When we get to a question, we'll make sure we get that person there at the next meeting and then out for the following. They did say that about 80% of the tasks for the intruder drill is done by the school. They recommended that we have a point person for the school to be our person. I'm not sure if we've made any decisions on that yet.
Like I kind of talked to Chris about being the lead. I know Brad's going to support him. He has some safety in his background, so to speak, a little safety in his background. But I did ask Chris to kind of take point and lead on this simply because if North Salem is selected, it would make sense from a communication standpoint, relationship, Q&A, all of those good things. He knows his parents and students best, therefore I think he'd be able to do that. So obviously he would be a key individual in this.
Okay. I do know that we plan on meeting with the regionals once a month for the first couple of months and then getting to where it's 2 times a month to even weekly when it gets closer to time. I know that we brought up concerns that we'd like to go over our safety protocols for evacuation. We also wanted to get a look at what Spring Grove's policy was for it, because they apparently went from a really big manual down to several pages where they found that there was just not, the information was just outdated. So we have more to come. They even brought up possibly starting to look into safety kits for the classrooms that it would that we would need. So more information to come. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Mr. Deschaux?
One question I would have, it sounds like this is going to be a pretty involved process, being that we don't meet throughout the summer. Is that a problem in keeping the ball rolling, or is that something that can be picked up again in September and moved from there?
We'll continue to meet. I think we already have our June date scheduled.
Yes.
So the committee is going to be, Dennis and I will be there, Chris will obviously be there, Dave will be there, and Brad. So those are kind of our 5 key individuals. So we'll continue to meet monthly. And as Dennis said, as we go further and further into our plan, we will invite other key individuals to answer those particular questions. So, you know, if we need to discuss transportation, we'll invite Deb to come down so that we can talk about transportation. If there are other things like facilities, obviously Dave will be there, so we'll be able to tackle those. We'll schedule visits at the beginning of the year to meet with, during, like, say, back to school night, so Chief Bensel will come out. He'll actually do a presentation for parents just to inform them what this actually is and what it's about. The nice thing is we're not first. Other school districts have already done it, so we're kind of learning from their best practices, and the two other school districts have really kind of have a blueprint. What's first for them is the fact that it's at an elementary school. So, as Dennis also said, we also are tackling kind of what are our goals we want to get out of it. It's just not a matter of did we do an intruder drill and did we take them down? Like, that's minor to the police. The police, that's no learning for them. They know how to do that already. So really the learning's for us. What do we want to tackle this? Like, you know, and another piece that makes North Salem attractive is kind of it has two communities. You have the Washington Township community and you also have the North Salem. So, you know, a learning for us might be that communication piece and how do we ensure that two communities are getting communicated to. How do we re-engage when some are closer and some are further? So there's some learning experiences that we're hoping to get out of it that they don't necessarily need. It's really a matter of testing our own safety procedures and security. So that's what Dennis said.
Yeah.
Some schools have these huge safety binders and policies, and they realize that in a real crisis like that, when they really do it, they don't need all of that. It really ends up being a 20 to 30 page, this is really what you do. So so we'll keep meeting, and as Dennis said, we'll start to meet twice a month, and then as we get closer, we'll probably meet once a week, just as we line that up, because media will be involved with this, obviously communication. Parents will either consent to participate, not to participate. I think we're really targeting the month of May because that will be after most of the high-stakes testings for elementary school. So we obviously don't want to conduct a drill in the middle of PSSAs or anything else. So I think May would be a good month, so, as I get laughter in the back. So that's probably a good time to do that. So, so I think it'll be a good thing. It'll be a good learning experience for us as well.
And just to play off of that, we did talk about possibly just keeping the area to the 6th grade hallway as well, to keep it away from the kindergartners. They would still be involved in the drill by evacuating, but not necessarily where they will come out of their room and there might be a child playing there or something. So we're trying to keep that to possibly the older children.
Other questions? Okay, moving on, we're doing something a little different this time. Normally we have our board assigned representative sections at our action meeting, but because of the length of the agenda for next Tuesday's meeting, we have decided to do these reports tonight so that we don't need to bring our pajamas and sleeping bags for next week. So we'll start first with the Dover Eagle Foundation. That would be me. I really don't have anything new to report other than the check presentations that recently took place for the grants. I'm very excited about that. And the foundation will be regrouping in the fall after we do a little planning work on that. Any questions for me on that? Okay, Mr. Emig, the York Adams Academy.
Graduation for York Adams Academy will take place on June the 14th at 7 o'clock. And the superintendent of Spring Grove is going to be departing York Adams Academy due to retiring. So Dr. Lombardo will be departing, and the superintendent of West York, Dr. Leonardi, will be coming on as the new superintendent of record. So that's, and I know there's a meeting coming up. I think it's next Wednesday, I think. Not sure.
Questions for Mr. Emig? Okay, Mr. DeLauder, the York County School of Technology.
I have nothing of importance tonight.
Any questions from board members related to the county school? Okay, Mr. Cherry and Mrs. Benko, LIU and Special Ed.
I don't have anything. I think I sent out the last minutes from their last meeting. It was relatively short, so.
Okay.
Is that the committee I'm on now?
You're on one of the ad hoc committees, yes, and I think Mrs. Alman, Amy sent you the dates.
Yeah, it's next Wednesday, there's graduation.
Yep.
I handed in to go, so.
Okay.
Questions for Mr. Cherry? Okay, Mr. Rawhauser, legislative.
Okay, two things I seen today reported was that the governor vetoed the bill for the one where you could eliminate teachers because of seniority to save money. And a bill on his desk right now is a new law that was passed by the House and Senate, laying on his desk, and whether he'll sign it or veto it or not, it has to do with hazing. And if that passes, then Dover School District will have to write a hazing policy. And it'll be handed out to the coaches. But that, I think he has till the 28th or 29th to make up his mind this month as to whether he's going to sign it or veto it.
Questions for Mr. Rawhauser? Okay, we'll move on to PSBA, Mr. Emig.
Did I tell you how much I appreciate being on this committee? I constantly get emails from PSBA, so there's a lot of reading to be done. So I don't know if all you get the emails, but I certainly do. But I have nothing else to report.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Emig? Mrs. Herman, the Dover Industrial Development Committee.
The April meeting was canceled, and Mr. Benton's going to take over for me for 2 months while I babysit. So we'll be letting him do the reports after today.
So you're not allowing him to babysit and do the diapers and that stuff? Okay. Any questions for Mrs. Herman? Okay, we'll move on to Mr. Cherry, the superintendent's report.
And I sent most of you this information. So my week kind of started off in Harrisburg. So I started there Sunday and Monday and Tuesday. So had the opportunity to join 70 other superintendents from around the district to work with Nissel, Pedro Rivera, and his senior staff on kind of a 24-month project with them. So the group is actually broken into individuals in the east, the west, and the central regions. So we spent a significant amount of time with the presentation Sunday evening into Monday, really taking a look at the 9 building blocks, and I believe I sent all of these to you. So what it was then, we spent a significant amount of time after that then taking a look at the top countries around the world that scored the highest on the PISA assessment. And the work here is really not to say we want to be one of those countries, but we wanted to be able to triangulate those countries to say what are they actually doing that allows them to achieve at these particular levels. So that's really what the 9 building blocks are all about, which is, you know, if we take a look at all of those countries and what they're doing, here are the 9 things that we see trending. So what the work of the secretary is will be to actually break us into cohorts. We will take these building blocks and we will begin an action research project, and we will work in regional teams over the next 12 to 15 months to study one of these building blocks and make recommendations to impact education across Pennsylvania. And next summer, next fall, we will actually go back to Harrisburg and we will present our projects to the remaining superintendents as well as legislators and prime ministers and educational ministers from these countries and receive feedback on our action research. Then spend some time retooling the information and then submit it for final approval through PDE. So I'm kind of excited to be on the front end of this, to kind of see the direction that PDE will be moving in that will influence probably the educational systems for the next 10 to 20 years with these recommendations. So a lot of work involved. There's going to be a lot of individual research and so forth, but what's nice about it is I feel that as a member of that group, we'll kind of be in the know of where we're going in terms of Pennsylvania and be able to bring that information back to the district to ensure that, you know, a lot of times we talked about mandates and things coming down and we're trying to catch up. In this instance, I feel like we'll be ahead of the game because we'll be able to kind of know where the state's going and be able to implement some of those expectations earlier. So, so that was my first update. And I will be returning sometime at the end of July to begin work with our cohort. The second update, and Dale's here with us this evening. I believe Mr. Eifert asked at our last meeting to get kind of an understanding regarding fund balance and move beyond York County, and what did we look like regarding our fund balance across the state. I didn't know if you were prepared to share anything, Dale, or if you had it. I did share the information with you all. I didn't know if you had a chance to look at it yet and look at that summary, but I think Dale did a pretty remarkable job of saying this is where our fund balance stands in terms of York County, all PA districts, and then he did a similar comparison regarding districts that look like us. So Dale's here this evening. I didn't know if you had a chance to look at the information, have any questions for him.
Maybe he could give the audience a little bit of a background on it. It's great information, and I think it's good news, too, so you can maybe go through the basics.
The question that had come up during our last budget discussion was the issue of fund balance and how it can and should be used as, in effect, a revenue source. And I can guarantee that of the 500 school districts in Pennsylvania, every single one of them is having that very same discussion, because it's just one of those things that you always talk about at budget time. And the issue that came up for Dover School District is that over the years that you have accumulated rather significant fund balance, and as a way of coming up with some what we call benchmarking, that is looking at other school districts and seeing what they have as a fund balance, making some judgments as to whether Dover is high or low, and the reasons why they're high or low, and whether we want them to be high or low. So I had provided some information on York County, and you had asked me to go statewide, and the results that I had of that study was even when you go outside of York County, Dover's fund balance as a percentage of budget, which is the common statistic, it is certainly high, which would justify decisions that you have made, not only to freeze taxes, but to think about eliminating the per capita tax and some of the other steps that we took. So the statistics that I gave to you, we had talked the last time, 28% is the figure that you currently have. Or that's not current. That's 2013-14, which is the most recent available data. And statewide, the average is around 15%. So you have approximately twice as much fund balance as a percentage of revenue as the average school district in Pennsylvania, which is very, very good news. And the other thing that we looked at, that I looked at for you, was, as Mr. Cherry had presented, there is an economy of scale that's involved, that really the smaller the school district is, simply the way math works, the fund balance percentage tends to be a little bit higher. So what I did was I separated out school districts of Dover's size. I came up with 200 school districts that I consider to be of your size. And that statistic is generally the same. So you're in the upper 25% of the state, and the upper 15% of those school districts have the same size. So that, I hope, satisfies your question.
That's perfect information.
Is your county situation an anomaly, or we can use statewide data as much?
I appreciate all the work you did on that, Dale. Thank you.
Just even at my meeting that I had on Sunday, there was 3 other superintendents sitting with me, and we started talking about fund balance and budgets this year and what does it look like. And the gentleman to the left, they actually had to borrow $4.5 million this year in order to do their payroll. Now they're stuck with a $75,000 interest payment that they weren't expecting. So on top of the $4.5 million they got a return, now they have $75 million in interest that they have to. And then the 2 other ladies that were sitting with me, their districts are about half our size, so they have about 1,500 kids. And so I kind of asked, I said, well, what's your fund balance? And the one individual said they have about $120,000 in their fund balance with a $31 million operating budget. And the other lady said, well, we're a little bit better. We have about $224,000. with the same, so I didn't share ours, especially after the gentleman beside me said they just took out a $4.5 million loan and had to pay $75,000 back in interest. And Pedro was there, and he was actually going up to Pedro to say, are you going to help us with the $75,000 in interest payments? So I know superintendents struggled with that, particularly this year with trying to get a budget passed and trying to get a balanced budget. So obviously I didn't talk to, those were 3 other individuals sitting at my table, but it was interesting conversation that we had.
Thank you, Dale, for all your work on that. Appreciate it.
May I say something? May I ask Mr. Kege a question? Okay. Mr. Kege, I understand that you were a business manager for a number of years in another school district.
Yes.
Okay. All right. This is what I'm fearing. We're not raising taxes for 2 years. And when I listened to the gentleman from Boyer and Ritter, I don't know if he's Mr. Boyer or Mr. Ritter, but anyway, we're looking at a $60 million building project. And he even recommended that maybe we want to, and I know we have this big fund balance and we keep talking about this, but there's $60 million coming our way. He made the remark that even if we would raise taxes this year, and please, I don't believe I'm saying this because I hate taxes, even 1/10 of a mil, it would be a really good idea to offset what's coming. Do you have any comments on that? Because I have a real fear of using this fund balance.
Right. What you would have to consider when you're projecting forward to a major building project, what you're talking about is what we call millage impact, and that is that when debt service, when you build a building, you have the equivalent of a mortgage that goes along with it that you have to live with. You have to consider your current debt profile, and your current debt profile is excellent, which means that when you get to the time that you might have to service that debt, that is, increase those mortgage payments, existing mortgage payments that you have are going to be disappearing. These mortgage payments will come into its place. So not only do you have the benefit of having a large fund balance, you have the benefit of having set aside money into a capital reserve fund that you can use to lower your mortgage payments, the amount that's to be mortgaged in the first place. And then you also have the benefit of mortgage payments that are going to be disappearing. So conventional wisdom is yes. Conventional wisdom is that if you have a pending building program, prepare for it so that you can minimize the millage impact, get mills in place, get your millage up to the point that when the mortgage hits, you don't have to have a spike. Absolutely conventional wisdom. Every business manager thinks in those terms. Your position is extremely unusual because it's very, very rare that a business manager planning for a building construction program has kind of the perfect confluence of favorable factors that you currently have. And that is money set aside for the building, a huge fund balance to absorb any spikes that you might have in your expenditure stream, or flat state support and revenue. And you also have that excellent, what I call a debt profile. So you have so many good things going for you that there's where I would stray from that conventional wisdom, is that I cannot see that you could reasonably justify a tax increase, even under the circumstances of the building program, considering all the things that you have going for a year. And that's a judgment call, and that is my judgment.
Okay, I know that the third year, then he started to show taxes going, and then they seemed to really, it looked to me that we're really going to get nailed. And that was a real concern of mine also. So, I mean, the last building project we did was like $30 million. This is going to be double that, so.
Yeah, this wasn't the audit report, was this the one?
And I apologize, I thought I had it, and I don't.
She's referencing Ken Phillips from RBC, his presentation on our.
Oh, it wasn't Ritter, sorry.
Yeah, so this is Bill, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and I was here for that presentation, and heard that. And the other factor that I just want to throw out, and I think Jen actually brought it up after Ken's presentation, Mr. Phillips' presentation, was that he was working with some really worst-case scenarios. The cost of the building was high. The assumption was that there would be no debt subsidy. The assumption was that the real estate tax growth in the school district was going to be flat. That state aid was going to be flat. Now, there's every negative assumption that you could come up with, he cranked into those presentations. So I think under a more realistic presentation, and you know how it is when you take an Excel sheet, you spread it out, you can make it really look however you want to look.
Right.
You just have to come up with assumptions that you think to be reasonable. But those are very negative assumptions. And it would be just as easy to come up with a model that would show you that at the time that your millage impact hits, your financial situation would be favorable, that you would not have the kind of millage increase that would show.
And I think some factors that have changed since that presentation that was made is, we submitted our Plan Con A for a new potential new building project. So that is a placeholder only for us to get state reimbursement for that project. So again, his presentation didn't not include any state subsidy for that. Also, through that Plan Con process, through the fiscal code passed here with the 15-16 budget, they're guaranteeing us to get the funds we're owed within a year or so. So there's some definite factors that have changed since the presentation that was given for a new building project, which would definitely change the taxable effect on the community.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just the subsidy issue, that was 20% of the cost, and the assumption was that there would be no state subsidy. There's going to be state subsidy at some point. There will be state subsidy.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on that? Okay, miscellaneous. Other comments or observations from our board members?
Yes, I was wanted to ask it under Steve's report, and then I forgot it. Are our solicitors' contracts up this month or next month? For renewal, or however we want to handle it?
We approve that on an annual basis, so it'll be up at the end of June.
So it's in June's business. Thank you.
Any other board members? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to our last public comment period. This is a 2-minute comment period. If you have anything to discuss on or off the agenda, please come to the microphones and state your name and address. Okay, nobody's on the move. So we will go to future meeting announcements. As I mentioned earlier, we will have an executive session immediately after this meeting to discuss personnel matters. And then our next meeting for board action will be next Tuesday, beginning at 7:00 p.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, yes?
Yes.
We're adjourned. Thank you.